back to TGIF. This guy is fragile. My name is Justin Stevens, Nurse Justin, for those of you that know the show. Dr. George is not in the house. He's out making house calls this evening. So we brought in an actual professional. This guy is a DPT, which is Doctor of Physical Therapy, and orthopedic specialist, Dr. Edwin Porras. Appreciate you coming on. I know we tried to get you in a few weeks ago right after the hurricane. So like with the hurricane and you just told me that you got a big birthday today that you're celebrating, like you got a lot going on. You're still taking your time out to help us out and go over some injuries for our supporters that need to know for fantasy purposes. So thank you so much for your time.
No, I appreciate it. I appreciate you having me on. This is always fun. I know we had a hard time getting on just because our schedules, and then the hurricane hit. So there's a bunch of stuff that a bunch of things that got in the way. But I'm happy to be here, man. And while we're here, let's get after it.
Yeah. For those of you that or for the people that don't already know, like George has already gotten me in tune with your website and in tune with some of the things that you do. But it's fantasypoints.com. You can find his website, or that's part of his website, or at least you write and you have injuries up there. Is there anywhere else that the people can go to try to find your work or anything before we jump right into it?
Yeah, no, the Injury Prone podcast and the Injury Insights and my Twitter at FB Injury Doc. Those are really the meat of where I post most things. So you got it.
All right. Absolutely. Great. Thank you very much. All right. Yeah. So real quick, I guess we'll just jump right into it. So one of the biggest things, fantasy purposes wise, and also personally, me as a Colts fan, Jonathan Taylor, this injury, it's not something that just recently popped up, but we kind of thought that hopefully we were out of the woods, and then all of a sudden he's out again. So what is this exactly? What's going on?
Yeah, man, this is a really interesting situation. Jonathan Taylor had a low lateral ankle sprain that on the right side that happened in early October. He missed 2 games. And the second game, a lot of insiders, a lot of beat reporters were surprised that he missed that game. But nonetheless, he missed 2 games. And now he came back in week 9, re-injured the same right ankle, low lateral ankle sprain. I know there were some reports that said that it was a high ankle sprain. To my knowledge, it's not, based on video, based on everything we know. It was just initially speculated to be high ankle, but it doesn't look like that. It's pretty clear on video that it's a low lateral ankle sprain, but that doesn't mean that it's nothing. I think a lot of times high ankle sprains get a bad rap, and low ankle sprains are not as demonized, I'll say, but they are just as bad. They can be just as bad, especially for a guy like Jonathan Taylor, who, to our knowledge, has never, what was a running thing that I think, who was it, Schefter or Rap Sheet said that he hasn't missed a game since like middle school or something like that. So it's highly unlikely that he's rolled his ankle this severely before. So this is something he's going to deal with rest of season. It's really unfortunate. On one hand, you want the Colts to put JT on IR so that he gets a month to rest, and then he can come back for the fantasy playoffs and give us a good push. On the other hand, if they don't put him on IR, I really can't imagine this going the same direction it went with Saquon Barkley last year, where Saquon down the stretch looked just really bad and wasn't getting the volume that he was getting after his own lateral ankle sprain. So as a fantasy manager, man, I tried putting out, before he was ruled out this week, I tried putting out some trade offers for JT, but I think Graham Barfield at Fantasy Points put it really well. Like, get 75 cents to 80 cents on the dollar for JT back at that point. So a lot of managers who aren't in a good position are probably just have to hold on to him at this point. And if you're in a weird league like I am, where weird things happen, I ended up with Saquon and JT. You can probably hold on to JT and survive it. But in other leagues where he was your 1.01, that's hard to say. Hopefully you drafted smart elsewhere.
Yeah. Absolutely, and they traded away Nyheim Hines and they got back Zach Moss, so that running back room is not looking so great without Jonathan Taylor there now. So kind of maybe potentially in tank mode to try to get a better draft pick. So definitely something to consider if you're a Jonathan Taylor owner. Maybe now's the time to get out as well if there's a chance that maybe they might put him on the shelf. But who knows? All right, so. Derrick Henry is the next biggest name that I think I see on this list, and a lot of people would argue he's probably the biggest name, but I wanted to get Jonathan Taylor out of the way for personal reasons. So Derrick Henry, what are we looking at?
All right, I muted myself. Derrick Henry, right? This was kind of a weird situation. there are a couple different things that happened. So Derrick Henry was limited on Wednesday with an ankle or with a foot. I'm sorry, with a foot issue, right? And so that sort of makes you raise your eyebrows because, well, Derrick Henry had a broken foot last year. Then on Thursday, he turns around and doesn't practice, but the injury status changed. So now he's only listed as rest, not injury related, right? So that makes me raise my eyebrows to a certain extent. Like I still think Derrick Henry's going to be fine. I still think he's going to be okay, but I do find it interesting that they listed him as foot, and then it kind of seems like, a plausible situation here is that they told the intern he's got a foot issue, but listed as rest. And then they ended up switching it on Thursday. But this is something to watch right now. No flags. I'm not going to say it's any, it's not any color of flag. It's just an eyebrow raise. So let's just watch it. He did have a metric shitload. I don't know if we can call this cuss on the show. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. You're good.
A metric shitload of touches and carries last week. And that's normal, right? If I had a foot injury with like 12 screws and a plate in it, and then I touched the ball 35 times, I probably would also have a little bit of a sore foot. So again, just something to monitor, but he should be fine.
Okay. All right. Very good. Fine enough that it's it's Derrick Henry, so we're going to play him. Let's see. So we have a shoulder and ankle injury for the often injured DeAndre Swift. And I don't want to say that as in like the dude's just always hurt. Like he's had a young career. We don't really know for sure yet. It just seems like this poor guy's always had a lot of issues. From what I understand, the shoulder issue is an AC sprain, kind of something a lot like Vikings running back Dalvin Cook has had.
So that's actually a little different. So Dalvin Cook has had subluxation, so recurrent dislocations that go back in on their own. So the shoulder sort of slips in and slides out on its own. He's been having those. Dalvin Cook has since high school. That's one thing. Now, DeAndre Swift could have something similar. He could have some sort of damage to the inside of his shoulder capsule. Based on the video, there's not really good clarification on what's going on, but it does look like it could go either way. It could either be an AC sprain or it could be some form of capsular damage. Long story short, to me, this seems like, and they came out and they said the reports initially were really ominous. They said, he might not need surgery. It's like, well, why? Nobody asked. Like, why are you saying he might not need surgery? Right? Like, it's not great. So that makes me think it's something capsular potentially. So that would be reminiscent of something like what T. Higgins had last year. I wouldn't be shocked if that is what happens, if that is the case, if DeAndre Swift has surgery in the offseason to correct that. And so what that means for us is I've shifted my mindset, because even DeAndre Swift, I work with athletes and it's a little bit different. It's a different sport, but athletes will never be the ones to tell you that they're not 100%. Like they want to get back out there. They'll tell you right away, like, I'm fine. I'm doing great. I feel good. But, DeAndre Swift came out in an article for The Athletic and he was like, oh yeah, I'm not 100%. And I don't know if I'll be 100% the rest of the season moving forward. So I've shifted my mindset from viewing DeAndre Swift less as a solidified, RB1 with top 3 upside, and I'm viewing him as like a volatile RB2, with some good upside. I'm just not trusting him rest of season to carry me the way that I was when I drafted him.
Outstanding. So Jamal Williams owners out there are happy to hear that, but those of us that love to see Swift play on the field, that doesn't sound great. It kind of reminded me of that when you're in high school and you have that first really bad car accident and you walk in and you're like, listen, Mom, everybody's okay. I'm good. I'm not hurt, but I just wrecked the car. So that's
yeah.
Your top injury remind me, not only is shitload actually a legit metric, it's actually a very widely used medical term that we use on this show. So
that's great. Good, because I use it too.
So next I've got again let's just keep it with the running backs. We've got a little bit of a theme going here. So James Conner has an issue out there in Arizona, and that running back core out there isn't necessarily in rough shape. They got some decent backups that have been playing pretty well in his stead, but is James Conner going to be ready to come back anytime soon?
Yeah, that's really tough to say. Last week he tried to play or tried to practice, and then they had to eventually downgrade him. So that tells us that, even just a week separated from that, he might be a little bit ahead of where he was, but who knows if he is going to go out there and have a full workload right off the bat. We know that he's been down for a few weeks now with this ribs injury. And so it might have been something more serious, like a fracture, like a rib cartilage fracture. And that's going to be something that doesn't necessarily go away immediately. And so I think that you're going to continue to see, Benjamin get some work, and I wouldn't necessarily anticipate Connor continuing to get see the same amount of volume as he did pre-injury. So I think he's a game time decision. In terms of game time, Cliff always has game time decisions. A lot of the times those guys end up going. It's just a matter of how much work James Conner will see, and I'm not entirely certain he'll see a ton of work. I'm actually in the bipocalypse this week. I am firing up Benjamin in a couple leagues that I need.
Yeah, very good. Nice. Gus Edwards. So Gus Edwards, we're going to roll with the running backs, just get them all out of the way. Gus Edwards did not participate in Thursday's practice. I haven't heard an update from today. Tweaked a hamstring or pulled a hamstring on this past week. Have you heard anything outside of that? Any chance he might play?
So he hasn't practiced all week, and Rap Sheet did come out and say that he might only miss 1 week, and that would make sense. Because if he misses 1 week, right, it's been about 10 days or, 9 or 10 days since the injury. And we know that the average miss time is about 1 to 3 weeks. I'm assuming that this injury is the same side where he had the massive ACL. And so if we do assume that, we know that they're going to take it cautiously. We know that they're going to be careful. And I don't think that we're going to see Gus Edwards this week. So I think we're going to see Kenyon Drake. In addition to, and I will hit on just the tight end here, since he is basically one of the oligarchs, right, that we only talk about since we're on the same team here. Andrews. So Andrews, the average amount of time, it appears like he had an AC sprain, and Andrews he's going to have 11 days by the time Monday night rolls around. You're probably waiting on Andrews. The average amount of time missed for these injuries for AC sprains is 9 days. The median is about, I think it's, if I remember correctly, I'm doing this off the top of my head, it's like 6 days, 7 days. And so he's cutting it close, but I do think that Andrews is in a place where he has a shot to play. Now, can he re-injure? I do think this makes it, I do think it's possible that he re-injures if he's not quite ready, but he does have a shot to play, and I think you're waiting on him, right? So I was saying this last week about when he was coming back from the knee injury, when it comes to strategy and just general fantasy strategy, is like, would you rather start one of those guys that is going to fall forward for 3 catches for 28 yards, or would you rather start Mark Andrews? Maybe he does get 3 catches for 28 yards because he's injured, but you give yourself a shot at that ceiling, right? At that 25, 30-point game that he could potentially give you. And especially at the tight end position, I definitely think that's something that in most leagues we should take advantage of.
Yeah, he only has to perform at about 75% effectiveness to still give you a mathematical edge at the position. So I totally understand that for sure. I know we're sticking with running backs, but how about a sort of running back in Cordarrelle Patterson? So I had the knee issue. They're pulling him off of the designated to return list or whatever. Hopefully he's eligible this weekend? ?
Yeah, so we're hoping, right? They're calling it a game time decision. I think this is a bit of gamesmanship. Typically what you see with these knee scopes is guys are only out 2 to 4 weeks, and he's been out 4 at this point. Assuming it's not as severe as we think it is. I do think that he practiced most of the week. But we're going to find out pretty quickly what they're going to do with him. If they don't bring him back this week, it will 100% be they'll bring him back 100% next week. I think he has been chomping at the bit. He's posted on social media. He is 32 years old, I think, at this point, or something like that. He is coming off of a knee scope. I need to do my due diligence. I'm not sure if he's had a scope before, but this is something that isn't going to necessarily go away for him right away, straight on. So he is a guy that I don't think you should necessarily rely on. Maybe for, again, the bipocalypse, you're going to have to start him this week. But if he has a big week, especially after the surgery, I'm seeing what I can get for him in return.
Very good. That's fair enough. Ryan Tannehill. Ryan Tannehill is the first big quarterback that we really have on the list, and Malik Willis is a guy that most of the fans are chopping at the bits. A lot of people want to see him take over for good, but is there a chance that injury gives Malik Willis a much larger opportunity here?
Yeah, I think this is a situation that we need to really pay attention to. So Ryan Tannehill was limited on Wednesday, and yesterday he didn't practice. Of course, they haven't updated the injury report at this point, at least based on what I'm looking at. But he is questionable. And what I would say right now is it doesn't seem like he's going to go. And if he does go, I just think he's going to be really limited with his mobility. I'm not sure what Vrabel will do in this instance. I think they know that they have Trickoni. Pone is quite literally a whole secondary who carry the load if they need them to, if they need him to do that. So I think it's a 50-50 shot for Tannehill. If he does play, I'm not starting him probably in any format though. I'm not anticipating him to perform very well. I think, and if that's the case, if they know that they're just going to hand the ball off to Derrick Henry, another 30 times, I'm not entirely sure why the team would decide to start Tannehill in the first place.
All right, very good. Real quick, Clamped Easy. This isn't a trade show, but I will really quick. I'll answer this so that we can move forward. But obviously, if you're going to put it in the comments, I'll definitely address it. I absolutely would take this offer. I would definitely get Kenneth Walker and give up Michael Pittman right now.
100%.
At JustinFF_. If you want me to chat out an explanation for you, I absolutely will. And I do see your current running backs and wide receivers that you put down there in the next post. Like I said, I'd still do it for sure. And George and the doc here both agree. So I think that's a strong move for you. Let's see. Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen is a guy that I had a lot of shares in. I was able to get him relatively cheap in redraft leagues all offseason. Got him in a couple of trades in dynasty leagues this offseason. And now I'm hurting. I'm hurting at wide receiver. I need this man back. Is he coming back soon?
This is hard to know, man. It doesn't seem like he's going to be out there this week. And it does seem, though, like it wasn't like he did say he had a setback, but it doesn't seem like it was anything too crazy. They haven't put him on IR yet, so hopefully they don't. This is what happens with 30-year-old hamstrings. It's really unfortunate. We saw the same thing in Julio's last season in Atlanta. They can ball out, but if their hamstring catches them, grabs them, and doesn't let them go, then there's really nothing else you can do. It's just a matter of time, tissue healing. So I think that he's going to be out this week. I think maybe for a fantasy playoff stretch, you try to get a hold of some Keenan Allen, but he is volatile rest of season. And unfortunately, this is the floor scenario of what can happen with soft tissue injuries and older wide receivers. Yeah, for sure. And speaking of wide receivers, the last wide receiver we have on the list is Allen Lazard. Then we'll touch bases on Darren Waller, and we can call this a show. Yeah, so Allen Lazard, it was kind of an interesting situation. If you watched it on video, he went to block, and in the middle of him moving his arms, there wasn't any contact. You see him sort of grab his shoulder, like jerked it back towards his body. That is a very similar injury that we saw with Dalvin Cook, where Dalvin Cook, 2 years in a row now, seemingly is a benign movement, and he gets injured, he grabs his arm, puts it back. So that could be a subluxation of his shoulder. We know that Allen Lazard has a history of rotator cuff injuries, which is the rotator cuff helps to hold the shoulder in place. And so basically what I'm saying here is if we see Allen Lazard out there, because he has been limited this week, if we see him out there this week, he is probably going to be in a sling, the one similar to Dalvin Cook, what Dalvin Cook wore. And I would say he is extremely volatile, just because, if your shoulder comes out when you're just lifting your arms up, that's going to be really hard to catch a contested pass. So if he re-injures, then that would be a nightmare scenario. So I'm staying away from Allen Lazard personally, even in the bipocalypse. Maybe he gets you a touchdown. I'm not entirely sure. And I know that there aren't a lot of directions, a lot of places to look in terms of help when it comes to the bipocalypse. But if you were desperate, I guess you could use Allen Lazard.
Yeah, and those slings, correct me if I'm wrong, but they are designed to limit a lot of that mobility. So if he's wearing that sling, trying to reach up to catch a high pass, even if it's not contested, just in general, I would imagine it's way different for a wide receiver to wear that sling and effectively play than it would be a running back. So
exactly, 100%.
And then finally, Darren Waller, he has not been playing great all season, really, even when healthy. So, but like you keep referring to, the bipocalypse is killing us. So a lot of us that have Darren Waller really need to see him come back, because his fill-ins haven't been doing too much better either.
Yeah, so Darren Waller had a pre-game workout last week, and it didn't go well, so they decided to sit him out. He was, again, limited all week in practice. So, you would assume another week later that he's getting close, but I still wouldn't necessarily put him in the bucket of going to be active, although it seems like he's trending in the right direction. Be ready to swap him out if he if they decide that he's still not quite ready. Again, another 30-year-old like Keenan Allen with a soft tissue injury he's been managing for almost 4 weeks now, 3 or 4 weeks now. So this is something that you're going to have to monitor closely. But again, given the pipe apocalypse, given the tight end landscape, if Waller is active, you're more than likely starting him.
Actually, you know what? There's still two more big ones that just popped up. George reminded me of Jamar Chase here. Obviously, we definitely need to talk about Chase. There's a lot of people in the fantasy world that are debating right now on whether or not they're going to hold on to him for 4 weeks. Maybe they don't have the greatest team and they need another piece to get into the playoffs. How long are we looking at for Jamar?
Yeah, don't skip steps, right? If you're not a good team, then I would trade Jamar Chase right now. It's sort of a double-edged sword, right? You trade away pieces to win now and give yourself a chance to be in the playoffs. But if those guys can't sustain the production you need once you get to the playoffs, then what's the point, right? But the flip side is, well, you hold on to them, you lose games, you don't make the playoffs anyway. So it really is going to be, you need to know your situation. You need to be honest with yourself. You need to know what kind of production you should be projected for moving forward. I mean, Jamar Chase, if I'm a contender, I'm putting out a trade. I'm putting out like a Mike Williams for Jamar Chase. I'm putting out a Marquise Brown for Jamar Chase. Maybe in another universe, I'm putting out Jonathan Taylor for Jamar Chase. I'm seeing what I can get, especially for those desperate teams who might need to just get a win now, because Jamar Chase is going to come back from this hip flexor strain and avulsion fracture that we're assuming. And he's probably going to be 90% of Jamar Chase. But man, I would take 90% of Jamar Chase any day of the week over a lot of other receivers. So I don't think that this is something that comes risk-free with Jamar Chase, but I do think that any risk is associated with him is worth it, especially if I'm gonna have him in the fantasy playoffs.
Yeah, absolutely. The last one that popped into my mind though was also Cooper Kupp with that ankle injury. He said after the game that he kind of felt like he dodged a bullet, but we never really got any clear clarification on just how serious that bullet was. It sounds like he's probably going to be playing, but is his level of effectiveness going to be hit with whatever this injury is?
I don't think that he's going to be necessarily limited. I think that this was a situation where some injury analysts could see some eversion, so like the high ankle sprain mechanism. I personally couldn't see it. I did see some inversion, so that classic lateral ankle sprain thing. But I mean, the bottom line is you're starting Cooper Kupp. You're not making any moves, and that have anything to do with Cooper Kupp. I would assume he's going to be active here. I think it might be one of the rare weeks that I don't use Cooper Kupp in like a cash lineup. So that might be the only type of downgrade that I give him, but he should be good moving forward.
Excellent. Very good. I think we hit all the major guys, all the major players that we were talking about. If you guys have any other specific questions for the doc, just look down there at the bottom of the screen. We have everything listed for you at FB Injury Doc, Injury Prone Pod at gmail.com. Hit him up, ask him your questions. And yeah, we did hit a Ravens update on the running backs situation. It doesn't look good for Gus Edwards. Be ready for Kenyon Drake. I see your comment down there. You can go back and watch it after we log out here. But I believe that's all I have for you. So, Dr. Porras, man, I really appreciate your time. I hope you have a great evening. I know you got plans. So you're awesome, dude. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate you guys having me on. Thank you.